The behavioural change that we're seeing, certainly in my sector, comes down to trust. But the way that we're consuming content is shifting dramatically. We see social platforms being berated constantly for fake news. There's concerns around mainstream publishers and the content that they're pushing out. I think I read the other day that last year 3 million people watched the Super Bowl via a streaming platform. This year it was 12 million. You can just see how things are changing. So we need to be on top of that. We need to understand how consumers are absorbing that content. And I don't think that ever stops. But for me right now, it's really understanding the partnerships that we can create, having insights shared from them on how the consumers are engaging with their content, and feeding that into your strategies and using that data to feed your decisions and optimizations.
Fundamentally, my behaviour and my consumer behaviour has changed. So what does that mean? Agility. So it's changed our marketing strategy because it's all about agility now. It's so focused on agility, and all these emerging channels that have come in this addressable space allows us to drive that agility.
100% retail digital media investment. So obviously sales grew online, mostly because of force majeure, people had to do that, but also for the convenience and the infrastructure around e-commerce is just so much better than it was before. So it's hard for people to go back from that. But as a result, consumers are spending more and more time in these digital environments from the retailer, outside of Amazon, all of them. And that's creating a huge opportunity for them to generate, more investment across those media propositions. But for brands, it's challenging because there's more and more money going towards them with less media fundamentals behind the spend. So that is top of mind for a lot of brands now, is to get more of a handle on how that investment is spent, planned, measured, reported, integrated into broader plans, and they're expecting that to grow, even for CPGs to have double-digit e-commerce sales, where traditionally that would have been within your offline grocery situation. So yeah, retail media.
Measurement is so key. I mean, we've lived in a world where we've become so reliant on things like cookies, offline conversion tracking, and we're definitely getting to a space now where it's so important that we have a really good understanding of how our media spend is being tracked. It's really important that we get a handle on that, so be that understanding the incremental value of where we're spending our media, trying to understand how we can use data science and different models to understand where we don't have tracking, like how we can use the data that we do have to understand what's going on in that world. So I think it's a mix between understanding how we manage measurement, but also having the right people and the right teams in place to truly cut the value of where our media is being spent.
So increasingly everything is bought through some kind of digital mechanism, and that creates a measurement issue. So in the past, where you had, say, for instance, a good portion of your budget spent with TV, you were happy with how it was measured, it was doing its job, and then you had other areas that equally had their own measurement sort of approach. Increasingly, with digital, you can measure outcomes, much more granular reporting. You can integrate those into a system so that you can compare. But we haven't agreed as an industry how to manage this cross-channel measurement, and it's increasingly that challenge is, if you like, enhanced by the fact that the digital players who are moving into, say, more above-the-line TV sort of content don't allow you to measure across their environments. So you create this, if you like, sort of like these segments of great data, but not merged together.
Safety of our advertising, but also what's the right thing? Is this right to advertise right now at all, taking into account what's happening in Europe. So for us being in Europe, it is a question. So how can we make sure that we are supportive enough and we use the right messages in basically everything that we do.
Deprecation of third-party cookies, particularly in digital, because we're so used to granularity and we've relied on that vehicle for such a long time. Now with third-party, that's pretty much decreased quite a lot already. It's quite difficult to continue helping our clients engage audiences or to find those audiences and find them, and obviously optimize their communications within that, whether that's frequency capping at a cross-channel level or even within channel. And then there's the last bit, which everyone always forgets, is the measurement piece. So how do we make sure that we can actually measure the outcomes that we're trying to drive? So that's a massive challenge, and for years we've worked on the wonderful GDPR and trying to figure out how we orchestrate sending the right message to the right people at the right time to get to those right outcomes. But if that main vehicle that we use in order to connect with those audiences is going, then how can we help our brands still do that? Arguably, that's what I would say is the biggest challenge.
For me, the biggest challenge in the digital advertising sector at the moment is the loss of the third-party cookie and mobile identifier. It's something that I've been working on at Xandr and had many conversations with clients about too. I think after the last 2 years, after the announcement from Google, everyone's kind of been thinking about the new solutions that might come around, but we're at this real inflection stage right now where people are thinking, well, what's going to be right for my business? What tactics should I use? And which combination of tactics should I use? And I think that's a big challenge in terms of mindset shift. In programmatic, we've been used to things being fairly commoditized, measurement being not always straightforward, but fairly straightforward. And now we're at a time of change, and that can be quite challenging as a whole industry for buyers, sellers, agencies, and ad tech players.
I don't think anyone's ready, if I'm honest. I think we try our best to be ready. I mean, we've often spoke about walled gardens in the world of like Google and Facebook, but actually, like our ability to do matching with Sound 4, ITV, we've got a test hopefully to go live soon with the Pub Italia guys in Italy. There's so much of these what would have been previously closed ecosystems that are now starting to open up due to the innovation in that space. So it's a really exciting time to be looking at that and understanding, okay, well, I now have a better view of what my consumers are doing in different ecosystems that I didn't have before. I can take the value of that and I can even use that in the non-digital world, for example. So it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that space evolves in the next few years.
The biggest opportunity is the balance of first, second and third party data when it comes to our advertising, because there is no one silver bullet for that. And we as a business believe that it is about utilizing all available data in the right way, from first-party data, for example, as a source of insights and personalization, all the way down to using third-party data for scaling our communications, and second-party data, for example, driving our conversion through retail marketing.
Yes, we are. We have to be within the agency world, because obviously our advertisers expect us to have the answers, or to at least find the answers for them. For the advertisers, we've got a lot of first-party data. Naturally, that's what they're going to rely on. And we've been working with them very, very collaboratively in terms of understanding actually what is that data, how good is it, is it deduplicated, every business is different. And how can we find identity within that and then use that identity in order to connect with those audiences elsewhere within our general media process. And how can we then show that identity is ultimately reaching the right kind of people, because even though we plan based on data doesn't necessarily mean we reach those right audiences. So how can we sharpen that up? As well as then, does it work, right? Does it drive the sales or the revenue or the ROI that you're looking for?
I think that's the beauty of being a broadcaster, is that we've never truly relied on cookies. And because my team works really focused on addressable advertising, we're looking at, free to air, and we have to have an alternative strategy to what cookies are. So looking at location and enriching that with various local data partners, I think is really interesting. I think what's also going to be really interesting for broadcasters as a whole, and I think we've seen Sky do this with AdSmart, is viewing data. I think that will be our first party data, so to speak, moving forward, which I think is we're going to be very specific, but also valuable for broadcasters. So I think, yes, we are in a certain way really ready for that.
There is varying degrees for sure. What is certain in my mind is that the solutions exist. I think it's about surfacing those and finding the right ones for you. What I think it presents for brands as a huge opportunity is the opportunity to differentiate. Where previously we might have been a bit lazy on the reliance of the third-party cookie, what we have now is the brand's ability or an advertiser's ability to find the partners that work for them, allowing them to differentiate from their competitors, because they might be choosing different partners who offer a different skill set or different performance. And I think that's a really exciting part, because the bit that we talk around cookies is around performance, but that performance is designed to drive competitive advantage. And I think in terms of where we are from a readiness perspective, the partners are there. It's about picking the right ones that work for you.
Yes, I think they should have always been worried about supply, but I think definitely now with the changes in the ecosystem and the technology that goes with that, the way that publishers are looking at monetization, the way that contextuality is now being taken into consideration, like having a good grasp on how and where your media is being spent, how you're truly optimizing it from top to bottom is so very important.
You need to understand that supply path, but actually understanding the supply path is not understanding how much is going on working media. Because the whole concept of working media is what are all the players or entities that help deliver my business outcome. That's what working media is. Really, what they need to understand is not how much is going on working media, but what are all the players contributing to that working media to deliver my business outcome, and not thinking that the working media is just the inventory that's served at the end. They need to know, because they need to understand what brands are affiliating with their brand, and secondly, understanding what are all the players in that supply chain that contribute towards my working media.
Should advertisers care more about supply? Absolutely. I think every advertiser should care about the supply, and I would hope that they already do. And hopefully they work in partnership with the agencies to say, actually, these are the parameters where I don't want to be visible, and here are the environments that we know that work for me. And I think what we've seen in the last 2 years, what's really interesting is that the whole ethnic diversity, sustainability, there's a lot of really core themes in our society that are popping up. For example, we specifically set out a platform where we curate media supply that then can form part of your ultimate media activation. So some clients come to us and say we want to make sure that we have a decent amount of media going into ethnically diverse, culturally relevant and so on environments. We want to make sure that we find audiences not just in the broader areas, but actually more in the niche channels, for example. So how can we get access to the environment? And so we work with Xandr, interestingly, to basically curate those places, and then we can directly advertise and say a certain percentage of our media money should be going into those kind of spaces.
But increasingly, it's important to support independent news, to invest in media that frankly just protects, the concept of free speech and accuracy, and also diversifying a bit from, ending up with a media plan that is focused on 2 or 3 players, and not supporting the wider ecosystem. I think with programmatic, brands have been concerned about the transparency through supply, so they're taking more of an interest in how that supply is curated and accessed and the price points, etc. But on a more macro level, I think brands and agencies are keen to make sure that the media plan is more diverse.
Absolutely. I think now, more so now than ever, understanding your suppliers is paramount. For a long time, we've had this kind of grey cloud over programmatic trading, for example, and where our spend is going. it's very intelligent of an advertiser to almost create mini networks, if you like, of inventory partners and publishers, and knowing where your media spend is going, and that's the way forward. I feel, you know, you can work directly with a supply source, or you can work with a tech partner that has really good supply integrated into their offering.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I think advertisers need to worry about supply, or need to think about supply. And we see buyers really caring about transparency. They want to know exactly where their media spend is going, which publications they're supporting. That's very important in a time like we are in right now, where world events are crazy and everyone kind of wants to support real and fund real journalism. So we think that we see advertisers really caring about that. So yeah, I think there's never been a more important time for advertisers to care about supply and the publishers they're working with.